Hi, my name's Elizabeth. I'm a marine biologist, and today I'm going to be telling you about a frightfully fantastic and just blooming weird marine creature you can find rock pooling. Today we are going to be talking about skeleton shrimp. So let's start off with the first and probably most obvious question. What the blooming heck is a skeleton shrimp? A skeleton shrimp is a type of amphipod, and I've spoken about them before, and you might have seen them before. They're usually the little almost bug-like creatures that hop around either the strand line, or maybe you've lifted over a rock and seen these little things kind of almost hop away. They will be amphipods. They themselves are weird, but this is a little tiny sub-genre of that amphipod that is probably even weirder. And that's saying something. Take an amphipod, give it a weird obsession with the YMCA, mix in some adaptations to impress the ladies, and you basically ended up at a skeleton shrimp. Don't worry, this will all make sense in the end, which just says a lot really, doesn't it? So before we delve into the weirdness of skeleton shrimp, I want to show you some footage of the skeleton shrimp. I feel like this would clear a lot of things up really quickly, and you're just going to be as shocked as I am about how bizarre they are. So without talking about any more, here we go. So I found this particular video footage of skeleton shrimp when I was on a training trip for my PhD down in the south of England. And we found this in a harbour because harbours tend to be places where you can find marine invasive species. Now, marine invasive species are species that don't come from the UK, they come from elsewhere. And actually we need to be really careful not to transfer them anywhere if you find marine invasive species, because they can actually cause economic or ecological harm. So if you find a skeleton shrimp in a harbour or a skeleton shrimp in general, you should have a look at it because it might be invasive. And you need to make sure that you are taking precautions not to spread that any further. I will leave some links down below to some really good websites and guidelines that you can follow to make sure you're not spreading marine invasive species. Well, how do I know so much about this, you may ask? Well, my PhD is actually studying marine invasive species in harbours, and I'm coming out with a video very, very soon more about my PhD and what I do as a marine biologist, so make sure to subscribe if you don't miss out on that. But back to the skeleton shrimp group themselves, because that is what we're talking about today. And I mean, first of all, just let's break this down. Look at how they move. It's like they've seen someone do a headbutt and gone, yeah, sorted. That is how we're going to move from now on. Don't need to do all this walking stuff. We're just going to headbutt our way through life. They have these massive appendages on their head that put all monsters in all sci-fi films to shame. To shame. If you ever find a skeleton shrimp in real life, the first thing you're going to notice is these appendages, and probably the fact that they really do like to headbang. They are really little rock stars. You will see them on the end of seaweeds or rocks or anything, and they'll just be this like little white shrimp-like thing, if they even look like a shrimp, and they just go at it, proper headbangers. But what they're actually doing during this headbanging craze is they are using their appendages to get things out of the water that they can use for food. So I mean, that may be the most rock and roll way to ever get food. Pretty awesome. But usually for something that is so large, these antennae at the top of their head are absolutely bonkers big to their body size. headbanging feeding and headbanging parkour usually sometimes isn't enough on its own to kind of develop such a giant large appendage. Usually when that's involved, it's something to do with reproduction. Oh, don't go there. I wasn't going there. No, what I mean is things like peacock feathers and deer antlers, obviously. Now this is a really interesting kind of evolutionary principle, and it kind of makes sense even though it doesn't when you first see it. So you've got the usual deer antlers. Deer males fight for women. The stronger they are, the better their survival of their children will probably be. The bigger the antlers, the stronger the animal, the more success their children are going to have, the more the female wants to reproduce with them. They want them to be the father of their children, and that is kind of how those antlers grow. So every generation, their antlers are getting bigger. They're having to, the males are having to spend more energy building their antlers up. The more energy that they can spare because, they're good at feeding, they're good at surviving. The bigger the antlers get, generation to generation to generations, you get these massive antlers on the top of deer's heads. That kind of makes sense. On the opposite end, you could add something that isn't useful, like deer antlers in fighting. You can add something that makes absolutely no sense to survival, like peacock feathers. So male peacocks have these giant feathers behind them, and the reason they have them is to kind of impress women, but also because they are really harmful to their way of surviving. Imagine trying to run away from a predator with a tail of feathers that is not aerodynamic, is about 4 times as long as you, and it's just ridiculous. So by them having, the longer the tail, the more difficult it is to survive, the more energy they have to put into growing it, the more easy it's going to be for something to catch up with them. And yet, if they can live with that crazy tail, they are really good at surviving, and therefore the children are probably going to be better at surviving. Cue that for generations and generations and generations, and you get the craziness of a peacock tail. It's the same sort of thing when it comes to these skeleton shrimp, but somewhat closer to the deer antlers. Males will woo the women with these giant crazy antennae, they will fight it out, and that is how they kind of pick and mate. Okay, so we've got a peacock or a deer, probably closer to a deer, to describe the male skeleton shrimp. How are we going to describe the female skeleton shrimp? I want to pause. I want you to go down below. I want you to comment what you think I'm gonna say about a female skeleton shrimp. I'll give you a few seconds. Okay, and then I want you to say it out loud with me, what you think I'm gonna say. Ready? 3, 2, 1, a koala. That's what you said, right? That's what you said. Why would you say anything else? It's obviously a koala. I'm saying koalas not because of their fluffy, cute resemblance, because there is none, but because they actually mate, and the female will have a little, what is called a marsupial pouch, that will keep the baby skeleton shrimps in. So instead of sending them off like lots of other parents in the oceans to deal with it on their own, they get a nice little warm pouch to grow up into tiny little skeleton shrimp before they're released. And this is actually a rarer parenting strategy in the ocean. It's very rare for a creature to actually take the time to help their children grow up instead of just sending them off into the unknown and just leaving them. I mean, turtles are the prime example. They lay their eggs on a beach and that's it, they're gone. So actually the skeleton shrimp it turns out is a good parent. But are they a good couple? Is she a good wife to the husband, if that's even a thing in nature, which it isn't, but you know what I mean. You've got your cute koala, you've got your deer, they're fluffy animals. Surely they are cute and cuddly, and maybe despite their very weird looks, despite being such odd creatures, maybe they are actually just good souls that, fight for their parents, they look after their children. No, they are weird, they're odd. That's what we talk about on this channel, all the weird, bizarre creatures of the world, and yeah. There's no coming back from this one. The male gets murdered by a poisonous claw from the female. So, maybe not quite koala-y after all. Now this doesn't happen in all species, it just happens in some, but that's far more interesting to talk about, so I'm just going to focus on that. I imagine that it doesn't happen in every single species, but we also don't know too much about, you know, the reproduction of every single skeleton shrimp, so who knows what other weird stuff might go on. But I think it's worth it note that even if one species does it, surely that's got to wig the other ones out. The other ones have got to be on guard, ready, just in case they start to get other ideas. I imagine this scenario occurs because looking after the children requires a lot of energy, and maybe just somewhere along the line, the evolutionary thought of one of them was like, could just use the father for a bit of fuel, which actually happens quite a bit. That happens quite a lot. So yeah, the father gets murdered and eaten by the mother with a poisonous claw. But I would also like to say that is so unbelievably, like, villains need to step up their game. That is, I don't want to hear about Black Widow, though I do love that series. Great character. Black Widow, cool. But maybe we should also have her partner in crime or fighting, skeleton shrimp lady. There's a reason I'm not in control of those comic book series. But still, skeleton shrimp lady. So I want to just finish this video by summarising my own turmoil that I felt, and hopefully you felt, though I suppose hopefully felt, maybe not hopefully felt, but felt during this video. I went from absolute bizarre amazement at the weirdness of these little headbanging creatures when I found them. I thought, wow, that's really cool. Looked them up close, absolutely blown away by their weirdness, was quite like, what is going on? I was pleasantly surprised when I went down that journey of discovering their antennas, thinking about deers and peacocks. It was quite a nice thing. And we swapped to koalas. I thought that was really cool. In fact, my heart was warmed to find a species that looked after their children so well. And as high as that warmth built, we crashed back down with the terrible fate of the fathers, and I thought, yeah, that sounds more right. Thinking about how weird that is, yeah, that sounds more right. And then I kind of just ended on thinking, God, these creatures are really, really cool, because what I've just told you in this video, how epic are they? They're really awesome, and something that hopefully not many people knew about and are now learning about, because I didn't hear about these, and I just think, God, more people should learn about skeleton shrimps, and they will learn more about it if we get a new character in a comic book called Skeleton Shrimp Lady. Hit me up. Thanks everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you next week for another video every single Wednesday. Bye.